The roar of the crowd was deafening, a wall of sound that rattled the crystalline walls of the Eridanian Grand Arena and shook the bones of every living being within it. Tens of thousands of spectators, noble-blooded aliens from a dozen star systems, rose from their thrones of bone glass and shimmering alloy, eyes aglow with anticipation. Flags of genetic houses fluttered in the artificial wind, and holographic displays cast enormous images of the arena floor into the violet-hued sky above Dot in the center of that vast coliseum, beneath searing arc lights that carved shadows into the scorched stone floor stood Rick Summers. His bare chest gleamed with sweat under the harsh lighting. Scars traced across his skin, old burns, bullet wounds, surgical repairs from wars that Earth had already forgotten. A broad-shouldered silhouette against the carnage-scarred arena, he looked like nothing special. No horns, no bioluminescence, no shifting skin tones or reactive plating like the other competitors. Just muscle, grit, and eyes that had seen too much. Across from him, towering nearly 3 meters tall, loomed the Gorgolan, a beast of nightmare, 4 arms ending in serrated talons, obsidian armor fused to skin that pulsed with internal magma glow, a face split by twin vertical maws, and eyes like dying stars. It pounded its fists against its chest, letting out a bellow that shook the dust from the arena's ancient stonework. The crowd howled with approval. They had come not for a contest, but for a slaughter. The human was an anomaly, some genetic accident that had clawed his way to the final round of the tournament of genetic excellence. None had expected him to last past the first match. And now, facing the Gorgolan, they were certain this was the end. But Rick didn't move. He didn't tremble, didn't flinch. He watched the Gorgolan with the cool patience of a predator. Combat wasn't a show to him. It was memory. It was instinct. He was already calculating. The Gorgolan charged. The ground shook as it thundered across the arena, claws slashing, jaws wide. Rick pivoted just before impact, ducked under a sweeping strike, and rolled clear. Dust exploded as the Gorgolan's claws struck stone where Rick's head had been a moment before. Rick moved like a blade of wind, fast, precise. He darted in and delivered a hammering blow to the creature's unarmored side, a cracking sound. Following, the Gorgolan snarled in pain, twisting with unexpected speed. One of its claws grazed Rick's shoulder, opening a shallow gash but not slowing him. He ducked a second swing, twisted into a spin, and slammed his knee into the creature's thorax. Another crack. Another roar. Above, seated on her crystal throne, Queen Selena of Eridania watched the human with the sharp curiosity of a scientist inspecting an unstable element. She reclined in her throne of woven energy vines and auric stone, her copper-hued skin glowing faintly under ambient moonlight. Her silver hair coiled like living light around her shoulders, and her eyes icy, precise, narrow. Interesting, she thought. Rick sidestepped a killing strike, dove into a roll, and came up behind the Gorgolan in a fluid movement. He wrapped an arm around the creature's uppermost throat just for a second. Just enough. With his other hand, he drew the ceremonial arena blade from the ground and pressed its edge against the joint behind the beast's mandible. "Yield," he growled, his voice ragged, eyes locked with the Gorgolan's. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, the Gorgolan let out a wheezing hiss and sank to its knees. "I yield to the human," it rasped. The silence that followed was a vacuum, then erupted into a frenzy of disbelieving cheers, gasps, and chittering alien exclamations. Holoscreens flickered with Rick's blood-streaked image, magnifying his every breathless motion. The impossible had occurred. Rick let the blade fall and stepped away, chest heaving, blood mixing with sweat on his torso. He didn't raise his arms in triumph, didn't smile, just looked up, past the crowd, past the spotlights to the queen on her throne. Their eyes met Dot, and in that instant, Queen Selena thought she saw something flicker in the human's gaze. Not pride, not arrogance, not conviction, not the crowd celebrated a new champion. But Rick didn't care about their cheers. This wasn't glory, it was survival. It was leverage, and he would use it. Selena leaned forward, intrigued. This human? He would not be easy to control, but she still believed he could be used. She had no idea just how badly she was about to be proven wrong. Asterisk. The grand doors of the palace parted with a hiss of pressured air, revealing a corridor of impossible beauty. Crystalline arches shimmered with refracted starlight, casting shifting auroras across the polished obsidian floor. Rick Summers stepped into that glittering space, his every footstep echoing through a silence far more oppressive than the thunder of the arena. He wore ceremonial robes, now woven in the Eridanian tradition, layered in deep emerald and silver, too stiff at the shoulders and flowing at the wrists. They didn't fit quite right, not just in size, but in purpose. He was a soldier, not a champion, not a display piece. And yet, that was exactly how he felt. 2 guards flanked him, tall, pale-skinned Eridanians in black and gold armor that pulsed faintly with biosynthetic energy. Neither spoke. Rick didn't try to make conversation. The moment he had torn the Gorgolan down, he knew he hadn't won anything, not really. He'd bought time, access, a place at the table. But what was being served? They reached the reception chamber, a vast hall beneath a ceiling of interlocking mirrors, where hundreds of alien dignitaries stood in elegant clusters, their voices hushed as Rick entered. All eyes turned to him, some curious, some disdainful, most incredulous. A human had never set foot here, never survived long enough to matter. But Rick walked forward with his chin high, jaw set, eyes sharp. Let them stare. At the far end, raised high on a dais framed by living crystal, sat Queen Selena. She stood as he approached. Her gown rippled like liquid mercury around her, sleeveless and regal, threaded with light. Her expression was unreadable, neither warm nor cold, just assessing, calculating. The champion approaches, the herald announced, voice echoing from invisible amplifiers. Rick Summers of Earth, victor of the Tournament of Genetic Excellence. Rick stopped at the base of her throne and bowed. Shallow and brief. Your Majesty, he said, voice steady. Selena descended the steps slowly, each movement precise, her gaze fixed on him. When she stopped just before him, she studied him with the cool interest of a scientist inspecting a rare artifact. You have surprised us all. Human, she said, her tone melodious but hollow. Your performance in the tournament exceeded expectation. You are unique. I appreciate the opportunity, Rick replied, his voice tight. Do you? She asked, circling him now. Her fingers trailed lightly across his shoulder. Most champions never reach the final round. None of your species ever survived the second. Yet here you stand scarred, imperfect, but undeniably exceptional. Rick said nothing. Her praise sounded more like a diagnosis than admiration. Selena raised a hand. An attendant rushed forward, cradling a scroll in a transparent sheath. The reproductive contract, she announced, lifting it for all to see. Reserved only for the most genetically valuable victors. You will provide material for the Eridanian royal bloodline. Your DNA is the highest prize of this cycle? Rick blinked. I'm sorry, the what? The queen turned toward him, smiling. With predatory grace, you will reside in the palace's genetic sanctum. Your needs will be provided. At designated intervals, you will contribute biological samples. Our geneticists will manage the integration process. Samples, Rick repeated, tone flat. And beyond that? Selena tilted her head, confused. Beyond that? There is no beyond. You are the vessel. The chamber fell quiet. Rick looked at the contract, then back at Selena. Her beauty was undeniable, otherworldly, even. But there was no warmth in her, only the hunger of survival, the cold precision of a ruler who saw value only in utility. So I'm a resource, he said quietly, not a person. You are honored, she replied, as if he had misunderstood. Rick took the scroll, staring at the elegant, inhuman lettering across the glowing paper. His jaw tightened. I'll need time to review the terms, he said. Selena's smile returned, razor thin. Of course. Later, alone in his new suite, Rick stood before a massive window overlooking the Eridanian capital. The spires of the city reached skyward like the fingers of a drowned god, lights flickering beneath twin moons. The room behind him was extravagant, lush furnishings, soft lights, ambient music composed by alien minds. It was beautiful. And it was a cage. The contract lay on the low table behind him, its seal glowing softly. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of being examined like livestock by geneticists in sterile rooms. 2 weeks of fake smiles and hollow reassurances. 2 weeks of compliance, until this moment. The chime rang softly. The door slid open. Queen Selena entered, alone. The preliminary analysis is complete, she said without preamble. Your DNA exhibits markers we've never seen before. Exceptional resilience. Intriguing adaptability. Rick didn't move. He didn't speak. Is something wrong, human? She asked. Rick turned slowly. No, he said, picking up the scroll. Just needed a moment to think. He met her eyes. Then deliberately, without hesitation, he tore the contract in half. Again, into quarters. Then eighths. The pieces drifted to the floor between them. Selena froze. You dare you? She whispered, fury rising like static. Do you understand what you've done? Perfectly, Rick said, voice low. You want my DNA, but you treat me like a specimen, a breeding tool. Where I come from, we call that slavery. You signed it willingly. Surrounded by guards. No explanation, no choice. That's not willing, that's coercion. Her eyes narrowed, voice turning sharp. You are a fool. You voided the highest honor your species has ever been offered. No, Rick said, stepping forward, eyes burning now. I just told you something. No one else in this palace has the guts to say. He leaned close, voice deadly calm. I'm not all talk, your majesty. And before she could summon her guards, before her composure snapped back into place, he smiled. A slow, dangerous, human smile, the one that meant, you just made a mistake? And Queen Selena, for the first time in a very long while, felt it. The walls of the Eridanian research facility were a pristine white, pulsing faintly with energy. Clinical, silent, cold. Rick Summers lay strapped to a steel examination table, the restraints humming with bioelectric charge. Thin red lines of light mapped his arms, chest, and skull, scanning, measuring, analyzing. Overhead, a ring of alien lights dimmed and brightened in rhythmic intervals, meant to monitor his neurological responses. He clenched his jaw and stared at the ceiling, jaw twitching every time the extraction arm descended. It had been hours since he tore the reproductive contract. Maybe more. Time bent in this place. It wasn't the pain that bothered him, though there was plenty of it. It was the quiet. The way the scientists moved around him, never speaking to him, only about him. Subject 1738 shows accelerated. Cellular regeneration under moderate trauma stress. One of them muttered, tapping a floating jalapeno. Viable donor structure. Next sequence. Internal marrow harvest. Rick didn't flinch. He just stared at the ceiling and remembered. The war. He remembered the mud of Jupiter's moons. The screams in his comlink? The day Earth made peace and told soldiers like him to find new purpose. This was not it. Footsteps echoed across the steel floor. Different, softer, hesitant. Rick turned his head slightly as a new figure entered the room, a young Eridanian male, lean, silver-eyed, dressed not in lab whites, but in formal cork robes trimmed with slate blue. The other scientists stopped. "Tehran," one of them said flatly. "This is a restricted environment." "I'm aware," the young man said calmly. "Queen Selena has sent me for a status report. I'll take it directly." There was hesitation, but protocol was protocol. The scientists backed off, whispering among themselves as they moved to the far corner of the lab. Tehran stepped closer to the table. His voice dropped to a whisper. "You're the human who defied the Queen," he said. Rick's lips curled into something like a grin. "Is that what they're calling it now?" "There's no time," Tehran said urgently. "You need to listen. To me. What's happening to you? It's not about punishment. It's about survival." Rick's eyes narrowed. "Eridania is dying," Tehran continued. "Our genetic line has degraded over centuries. We bred for perfection, so long we forgot to preserve diversity. Now we're sterile, sick. The Queen can't bear children. Neither can most of the royal houses." Rick didn't speak. He didn't need to. His eyes said, "Go on. You were chosen for this tournament because of your profile, your adaptability, your resilience. You were never just a contestant. You were targeted." Rick's chest rose slowly, deliberately. "So I was baited into this." Tehran looked guilty, but nodded. "Yes, the tournament was just a public spectacle to mask the real objective. Your DNA, your species might be the last viable solution for ours." "And no one thought to ask," Rick muttered. "Just stick the human in a cage and take what you want." Tehran stepped closer, voice dropping even lower. "Not all of us agree with the Queen's methods. There's a resistance. We believe in partnership, not harvesting. In cooperation, not coercion. But we're few. And now," he glanced at the door, "now something worse is coming." "What?" Before Tehran could answer, alarms blared. Across the lab, crimson light flooded the chamber. "Warning," a mechanical voice intoned. "Genetic purity insurgents have breached the palace perimeter. All personnel, initiate Royal Exodus Protocol." Tehran's face drained of color. "The purists. They've launched the coup." Rick's restraints began to glow. The scientists returned in a flurry of movement. Dr. Perrin, the lead geneticist, barked orders. "Evacuate the subjects. Begin extraction sequencing. The Queen may fall, but this specimen cannot be lost." Rick turned his head toward Tehran one last time. "You said there's a resistance. Are they moving now?" Tehran nodded, slipping something small and metallic into Rick's hand, a palm-sized disc. "Security override. You'll get one chance." Then he was gone. The guards re-entered. Rick went limp, waited dot as the scientists approached with their tools. He whispered, "Now." He slammed the override disc against the restraint console. Sparks exploded. The biolocks released with a hiss dot in one fluid motion. Rick rolled off the table, grabbed a stunned guard by the arm, disarmed him, and drove the butt of the plasma rifle into another's helmet. The room descended into chaos. Rick moved like a storm-controlled, devastating. 3 guards dropped. One scientist fled screaming. Perrin reached for a tranquilizer. Rick grabbed him by the collar and drove him into the wall. "You wanted a specimen?" Rick growled. "You got one." Sirens blared louder. The facility rocked in explosion in the distance. The palace was falling. Rick turned toward the exit. He had the weapon. He had the override. He had Tehran's intel. He could escape now. Find the spaceport. Get off this twisted world. But he didn't move. He thought of Selena, of her eyes, when the contract fell to pieces. Of the fury, the confusion, and the flicker of something else. Doubt. He didn't owe her anything. But he wasn't leaving a coup behind without knowing what she'd become. With a grim expression, Rick turned away from freedom and headed back into the fire. The palace was chaos. Smoke rolled through the arched corridors like creeping fog, laced with firelight and plasma flare. Alarms blared from every surface walls, ceilings, embedded holograms shouting overlapping warnings in Eridanian. Once pristine marble floors were now cracked and bloodied, littered with shattered statues and the bodies of guards loyal to the Queen. Rick Summers moved like a shadow between collapsing columns and flickering light panels, the stolen plasma. Rifle in his hands humming with deadly promise. The uniform he wore, still too tight across the shoulders, bore the emblem of Eridanian security. It wouldn't fool anyone up close, but it gave him just enough of a pass to move fast and unnoticed. Through the dying heart of an empire, his breath came sharp but steady. His instincts were fully alive. No, this was war again. Not a tournament, not a test, a battlefield. And in battle, the rules were simple. Survive. Strike first. Save who needs saving. He rounded a corner and ducked into an alcove as a squad of purist soldiers passed, armored in gray, their visors opaque. Their insignia, the ancient Eridanian purity spiral, was etched into their chest plates, like a warning to all who dared mix bloodlines. Rick gritted his teeth. Idiots. They'd rather see their species extinct than accept help from someone like him. He followed the emergency pathing lit by dim floor lights, each arrow pointing toward the throne room. Explosions echoed somewhere deeper in the palace. Then a scream. Then silence. Rick moved faster. The throne room came into view, its great golden doors torn open, smoke billowing out. The crystal arch above the chamber was fractured, massive. Shards littering the steps. Inside, carnage reigned. Bodies. Royal guards, dignitaries, servants, scattered and fallen. And at the far end, on the dais, Queen Selena stood alone. Her ceremonial robes were torn, her silver hair tangled with blood and dust. But she held a double-bladed energy staff with both hands, the weapon crackling as she spun and deflected a barrage of fire from half a dozen purist soldiers closing in. Rick didn't hesitate. He fired once, twice. The lead attacker jerked backward, his shot missing the Queen by inches. All heads turned as Rick strode through the shattered entryway. "Sorry to crash the party," he said, leveling his rifle, "but I've got some unfinished business with Her Majesty." "You don't get to kill her before I do." One purist raised his weapon. Rick shot him in the leg. Another charged. Rick rolled, disarmed him mid-spin, and sent him sprawling with a strike to the throat. The rest hesitated, and that was all Selena needed. She surged forward, staff slicing in elegant arcs. Energy lashed out, carving through armor, slamming bodies into pillars. Rick moved beside her, covering her blind spots, using every trick Earth's battlefields had taught him. Low stances, targeted shots, brutal efficiency. Together they moved, like they'd trained for years. When the last purist dropped, Rick stood panting, his rifle raised, eyes scanning for reinforcements. Selena leaned against her staff, her chest heaving. "You came back," she said, voice breathless, disbelieving. "You can't die until we finish our argument," Rick muttered. Selena looked at him, then really looked, and something passed between them. Not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding. Their moment was broken by the palace system crackling to life. "Attention all loyal subjects," came Tehran's voice, tight with urgency. "The purist faction has seized the communications hub and primary security grid. They are executing all non-purebloods and known royal loyalists. This is not a drill. Implement Exodus Protocol immediately. Selena's eyes widen. They've taken the comms. That means they can override palace defense systems. Automated cannons, lockdowns. My people will be slaughtered. Rick stepped to the throne and examined the dais. Palaces this old usually have something under the throne. Emergency tunnels? She hesitated. Yes. He turned to her, rifle still ready. Then we go. Now. Selena activated a hidden switch beneath the throne, and a section of the back wall slid open, revealing a narrow, spiraling passage bathed in bioluminescent green. They slipped inside, just as the next wave of purists stormed into the throne room behind them. A passage, twisted and turned, cut into ancient stone, walls slick with age and memory. Their footfalls echoed down the winding stair, mixing with distant tremors from detonations far above. These tunnels date back to the Succession Wars, Selena said between breaths. Built when assassination was common. Some lead to the city, others to hidden bunkers. One leads to a private hangar. That's the one we want, Rick said. You have a ship there? The Royal Starbird, she said, her pride flickering even now. Heavily armored, heavily guarded. We'll take something smaller, Rick said. 2 seats, less chance of being noticed. And faster. They reached a split in the tunnel, 3 paths diverging in darkness. That way, Selena said, pointing to the right, the hangar. Rick nodded, and they pressed on. But then, in the near-distance explosions, closer this time, the purists are bombing the palace, Selena realized, her voice hollow. They would destroy our entire history just to kill me. Rick paused and looked back at her. They're afraid of you. Of what you represent. Adaptation. Change. Selena's gaze met his. How do you know all this? I had a little talk with Taran, he said. He told me about the genetic decay. About you. She went still. I had a right to know. Rick added softly. Another tremor shook the tunnel, dust falling from above. We can talk ethics later, he said, guiding her forward. Right now, we've got to move. They ran. But even as the tunnel shook, and the sounds of pursuit grew closer behind them, neither of them noticed the shift between them. Something unspoken had changed in the shadows beneath the weight of war, mistrust, and blood. Selena no longer saw a specimen, and Rick no longer saw a tyrant. For now, they were just 2 survivors, bound by fire, and moving toward something neither of them yet dared to name. Asterisk, the verdant valley unfolded below them. Like an emerald dream lush, quiet, deceptively peaceful, beneath the pale twin moons of Eridania. Their stolen scout ship wobbled as it descended, smoke curling from the damaged stabilizer. The treetops swayed in anticipation, broad-leafed flora rustling under the thrumming pulse of the ship's failing engines. Brace, Selena warned, her voice tight, hands dancing over the cracked control panel. The dashboard flickered and spat sparks as she fought to keep the nose level. Rick gritted his teeth and tightened his harness. This thing still wants to fly. It's just being difficult. She's trying, Selena murmured. The ground rushed toward them. With a thunderous crash, the ship struck the soft earth, skidded across a mossy glade, and came to rest nose down beside a glassy, moonlit lake. Dirt and broken vegetation rained down around them. For a moment, all was still. Then Rick moved first, groaning as he unbuckled his restraints. A gash above his brow wept a thin line of blood, but he ignored it. Selena? She slumped against the control console, her silver hair hiding her face. When he touched her shoulder, she stirred with a soft groan. I'm all right, she said hoarsely. But when she looked up, blood traced a bright line down her copper temple. Rick didn't hesitate. He pulled her free from the seat and helped her outside into the cool night air, guiding her down the ramp. The valley was quiet, too quiet. No purists in sight. Just the whisper of wind through towering trees and the eerie call of something reptilian in the distance. They collapsed onto the grass beside the lake, the silence wrapping around them like a blanket. Rick turned toward her. Your head. Hold. Still. She didn't protest when he began cleaning the wound with water from his canteen. His touch was gentle but precise. Every motion practiced military field care at its finest. You've done this before, she said, studying his face while he worked. Too many times, he muttered. Fellow soldiers, mostly. Sometimes. Civilians. Once, a dog with a broken leg and a grudge against my medikit. Selena chuckled softly, then winced. You're strange, Rick Summers. So I've heard. He pressed a final dressing to the gash and secured it with a synth patch. There, you'll live. They sat in silence, watching the lake shimmer in the moonlight. Rick finally broke it. Why did you pick me? Selena didn't answer at first. When I first saw you in the tournament, she said slowly, you were different. Not just physically. You fought like someone who had nothing left to lose, but something worth protecting. Most warriors enter the arena for glory. You fought to survive. And I needed someone like that. Someone strong. Rick nodded slowly. And someone desperate. Her silence confirmed it. The royal bloodline's sterile, isn't it? He said, his voice low. Tehran told me. About your genetic decay. That's why you needed a human. Why you needed me. Selena didn't deny it. I cannot bear children, she admitted quietly. The irony. The queen of a dying bloodline, tasked with saving her species, and unable to pass on life herself. Rick's gaze softened. I pushed forward the reproductive initiative, not just to preserve our empire, but to hide my failure. My shame. You were supposed to be a solution. A weapon of genetics. Not a man. Her voice cracked, just slightly. Rick looked away, toward the twin moons above. I understand what it's like, he said. To be used, to be reduced to utility. I didn't sign up to be a stud in a golden cage. But I stayed alive in that lab because I realized something. She looked up at him. You're not a monster, he said. You're just as trapped as I was. Different cage, same bars. They fell into quiet again. Heavier this time. Charged. Then, finally, Selena whispered. Why did you come back? Rick didn't hesitate. Because I don't leave people behind. Even people who made mistakes. She turned to him, her eyes glowing softly in the moonlight. I didn't deserve that. No, he said, but maybe you deserve a second chance. Her hand reached out, tentative, fingertips brushing his. You defied me. You humiliated me. You made me question everything. And you still haven't killed me, he replied, half smiling. A breathless silence hung between them. Then, like twin magnets drawn across the void, they moved together. Their lips met. Softly, uncertain at first, then deepening with raw honesty. No contract, no duty. No desperation. Just a kiss shared, chosen, real. When they finally pulled apart, Selena's voice trembled with something closer to wonder. This is not part of any program. No, Rick said, brushing a strand of her hair back. This one's all ours. And, for the first time since he arrived on this world, he felt not like a pawn but a partner. A new dawn was coming. And maybe, just maybe, so was something neither of them had dared to hope for. Asterisk morning in the verdant valley arrived with a quiet majesty. Crimson and gold light across the alien sky as the twin suns crested the horizon. The trees, gnarled and ancient, shimmered with dew, their translucent leaves catching the light like sheets of living glass. Strange bird-like creatures crooned songs that sounded like low chimes carried on a gentle breeze. It was a new day, but the war hadn't ended. Rick Summers stirred first, instincts sharp as ever. The makeshift shelter they'd built beneath the broad boughs of an alien willow had held through the night. Selena lay a few feet away, her copper-toned skin glowing in the morning light, her face softened in sleep. For a brief moment, she looked like anyone, just a woman, not a queen, not a symbol. He stood quietly, checking the perimeter with practiced eyes. No signs of patrols, no incoming ships. They were safe for now. When he returned, she was awake, sitting upright and gently peeling the synth patch from her temple. "Good morning," Rick said, crouching and offering her a handful of small purple fruit. "Joba berries," she murmured, accepting them. "Delicacy among my people. You have an eye for survival. I have a nose for not starving." She chuckled softly, taking a bite. "They're sweet." "Good. I was half expecting them to melt your organs." They ate in silence, the valley stirring to life around them. Afterward, they hiked back to the downed scout ship. Rick ran a diagnostic while Selena circled the hull. The stabilizer was beyond repair, the communication array fried. The rest of the vessel? Functional. Barely. "We can fly it," Rick said, wiping sweat from his brow. "But steering will be tricky." "We won't get far," Selena added. "Not without a better vessel." She glanced up at the sky. "But we may not need to." Just then, a low hum vibrated through the valley. Rick stiffened, hand going to his weapon. A sleek Eridanian patrol ship coasted into view above the treetops and descended toward a clearing a half-kilometer away. "Scouting party?" Rick muttered. "Purest crust on the hull," Selena confirmed, her expression turning grim. "They must have found another way around the canyon blockade." Rick studied the terrain. Lightly armed. 4, maybe 5 troops. Recon. If they find us, they won't. Rick's expression was hard, resolved. "We take them out, quietly." Selena didn't argue. "I'll circle to the east. You take the west. We strike on my signal." She moved like liquid shadow, silver hair tied back, staff in hand. Rick flanked through dense undergrowth, his boots silent on the soft forest floor. The purists were arrogant, too relaxed checking their scanner, setting up a communication array. They hadn't expected the hunted to be hunting them. Rick spotted Selena across the clearing. She raised 3 fingers. 2. 1 dot. They moved as one. Rick struck fast, silent, an arm around a guard's throat, dragging him backward into the ferns. The body fell without a sound. On the opposite side, Selena's staff cracked against a soldier's helmet, dropping him like a stone. The remaining 2 purists whirled too late. Rick swept one's legs out, slamming the butt of his stolen rifle into his jaw. Selena dodged a plasma bolt and delivered a precise nerve strike to the final attacker dot. It was over in less than 20 seconds. Breathing heavily, Rick looked at her across the clearing. "You fight well," he said, impressed. "For a queen." "And you for a genetic specimen," she replied, smirking. They secured the purists with restraints from their own gear, then approached the patrol craft. Sleek, armed, fast, everything they needed. They loaded their supplies and took off, leaving the scout ship behind. The flight was short, less than an hour before the mountains parted to reveal the hidden research outpost. Tucked into the cliffs, its architecture blended seamlessly with the stone, covered in vine-like solar coils and defense shielding. As they approached, a team emerged from the main entrance, weapons drawn until they saw who was at the helm. "Your Majesty," said the lead scientist, a tall, silver-eyed Eridanian. "We feared the worst." "Dr. Nareen," Selena greeted. "The purists control the palace. Tehran has been captured. The capital is burning." The doctor turned to Rick. "And this is the human?" "Rick Summers," she said without hesitation. He saved my life, more than once. He is to be treated as an ally, not a specimen. Dr. Naren's eyes widened slightly, but he bowed. Of course, Your Majesty. Please come inside. Inside the outpost, news feeds played in holograms footage of violence in the capital, broadcasts of purist speeches, and terrified citizens running through once beautiful streets. The Queen watched it all in silence, jaw clenched. Declared you unfit to rule, Naren said softly. They claim you've tainted the bloodline by fraternizing with offholders. That your reform efforts were a betrayal. Then we fight, Rick said simply. Plans were laid, loyalist units identified, hidden assets awakened. Rick, with his military background, advised on strike tactics and fallback positions. His input wasn't just heard, it was followed. The Eridanian commanders deferred to him, eyes opening to his capability. No longer a captive, a commander, a partner. That night, as the meeting ended, Selena stood beside Rick on a balcony overlooking the valley. The sky above was streaked with stars and moons, the air cool and still. I owe you more than I can say, she whispered. He looked at her, tired but steady. Then say it. I'm sorry, she said. For the lab, the contract. For not seeing you for what you were. A person? He asked, half smiling. A man, she replied. One who challenged me when no one else dared. They stood in silence, side by side. Then, softly she added, Your defiance taught me something. That dignity matters more than genetics. That? Strength isn't something you extract. It's something you earn. He turned to her. And you taught me something too. She arched a brow. Oh? That not all rulers are monsters. Some are just desperate and brave enough to change. Selena reached out, her fingers brushing his. There's a word in our language, Valen. It means one who stands firm in his convictions. Rick smiled. Good word. If the war ends, she whispered. If we survive this, and if science does what I now believe it can, I would name our son that. Rick froze, staring at her. Wait, what? Selena's smile widened ever so slightly. I'm pregnant, she said, eyes shimmering with something ancient and new. It's impossible. And yet, thanks to you and Naren's ethical therapy, it's real. He stepped forward, almost breathless. You're sure? She nodded. Then she took his hand and placed it gently over her abdomen. Rick swallowed hard. Overcome. A son, she whispered. Born not of contract, but of choice. And beneath a sky that had once seemed so far from home, Rick Summers realized something he never expected. He hadn't just saved Eridania. He had become part of it. Asterisk. END. Asterisk.